Storing the Mind, where we discuss the mind and brain and all its domains. My name is Khalid Mahmood. Today's topic is It is the End of the Nation State. My guest this week is once again Thomas Pochari. He writes on World Affairs Monthly. Hi, Tom.
Hi, good to talk to you again, Khaled.
Okay. My question today is about the nation state. It's something
Yeah,
that me and you yourself have discussed many times before. I Can you just explain why
yeah.
do you think it is the end of the nation state?
Okay, I'm going to do it as quickly as possible within 15 minutes. All right, now, I think the best statement to start out with is that information, Khaled, information and knowledge are reaching a very high level or beginning to reach a high level. And this power is unrivaled. You cannot compete with it. It's going to destroy you. So, this power, knowledge and information, mostly information because you got to have theory, and theory comes from information, but that comes with the brain. But this power, information, and knowledge is going to completely destroy the nation state. And of course, you have to understand that the power of information and knowledge results in tools being developed. And, the popular word today is technology. So we have, for example, I just read that the Department of Justice in Washington wants to go after cryptocurrency. They're going to try to regulate it. They're going to try to stamp it down, crush it or whatever. And of course, the Chinese government is doing the same. Well, the fact is, with cryptocurrency, you can move wealth around anywhere in the world instantaneously and securely. Anybody can trade what they want. They can buy in the net, the dark web, what they want. You buy anything you want, and no one can stop you. Now, you do have to have some computer skills and computer science knowledge, and that is very difficult to achieve. But the fact is, it is going to be achievable at some point. You're going to have software that will help you. All right, so but we need to go back in history a little bit. So this is a great question because I've been thinking about this since I was a teenager. Why is history the way it is, human history? And I began to understand, in my late teens, that it could be figured out. And by 2007, so I was about maybe, I don't know, 47 years old or something like that, I realized that the brain is basically transmitting information from brain to brain. And if the cost of this transmission of information is lowered, you have a just rapid and very powerful explosion of knowledge. And so, if you go back way back in history, a couple 100,000 years ago, we don't know really much about the history of origins of the human animal, but maybe the wheel was the first technology developed to lower the cost of transmitting information from brain to brain, and you can move around with the wheel at a much faster pace. Then you find that history just goes on and on and on, and probably it peaks. The first phase of this history, human history, peaks around the Roman Empire, Greco-Roman Empire, and they're building out pretty fearsome system, but it peaks around 200 AD, and everything just goes down into a dark age or depression or whatever you want to call it, and no one has any literacy. It's really hard to make a living, and people are dying left and right. Population declines, but then around 1400, 1500, a chap in Mainz, Germany, Johann Gutenberg, I'm sure everybody's heard of him, invents a movable type printing press. Now, the Chinese had done that a couple of centuries earlier, I think 1100, but I don't think it was movable type. No one really knows much about it. But the emperor at the time said, no, no, we don't want this. Yeah, because power doesn't want information and knowledge. All right, so everything starts to take off because of the transmission of information and knowledge at a much lower cost. Huge reduction in cost. Before you know it, everybody's literate. Before you know it, people are writing books. Before you know it, people are doing all sorts of scientific inquiry. People are doing religious inquiry. Everything's going on. And all this knowledge is flying around and going all over the planet. Okay, it's still pretty slow and it's still pretty costly, but it was a major improvement from the previous centuries. Now we can see clearly that about 550 years, or six hundred years have passed, and we're now reaching the end of this second phase of history. So there will be no United States, just like there was no Rome. A couple of centuries later, you might have been able to ask some young chap in Poland or wherever, not Poland, but somewhere in the former Roman Empire, tell me about the Roman Empire, and they kind of look at you like, Roman Empire? uh, I don't really know too much about that. So, the Roman Empire, of course, was important, and its legacy lived on and on. But people today don't talk about the Roman Empire; it's all gone. So the 500 years passed. All these institutions, schools, universities, banks, nation state, borders, Treaty of Westphalia, police, courts, parliament, where we vote, Republican government, and all this stuff, it's all going to just disappear because it's useless now. We can see all around us that it's basically just useless. And for example, the Romans probably went down mostly because of debt. Their debt, they had a hard time paying the bills at the end, because they're going down, declining. And of course, they did their best, but they diluted the value of the currency. And of course, sooner or later, they couldn't even pay the soldiers, they couldn't pay the farmers. Farmers couldn't make a living. Everybody went broke and fled and just dispersed all over the place. So the Rome city of Rome failed to exist. They went to Ravenna, and then Venice, city of Venice was like a trading empire, because it was isolated in the water. Anyway, you could see clearly that they did their best to kind of restore things, but it was impossible to restore things because history is moving on. Now we have the internet. We have a convergence, and I predicted this 30 years ago. I wanted to build it myself. I wanted to call it the Zypho Corporation. We have a convergence of three technologies: the satellite, the computer or semiconductor, and the internet. And this will make it possible for everybody to get connected to the internet without going through dictator Sisi, Al Sisi, in Cairo. Pretty funny. So, you can connect to the internet now, but you have to go through the thugs that rule over you. And of course, it's going to be very difficult to do that in the future when we have, well, we have Musk is trying to do it with about 40,000 satellites, little teeny satellites. It's a beginning. But anyway, we will have an optimization of this technology. And this will mean an explosion of knowledge, just as like it did before, after Gutenberg did his thing in around 1453 or whenever it was. And we're going to have an explosion of knowledge, and it will all be basically free, Colette. Free. Free information. And the folks that now rule over us, these Ashkenazi Jews, they think they can control everything. Well, I'm afraid that it's not going to be the case. There's a lot of smart people out there, not just the Ashkenazi Jews who rule over Harvard and and tell Biden what to do, et cetera, et cetera. So it's basically the end. Now the debt load. And I was explaining to your audience a couple of weeks ago in a previous interview, and this would be my final statement here. I think I keep it to 10 minutes. So the debt load in 2016, the federal debt service cost as a ratio of hard cash uh, federal revenue was about 12%. Now it's grown to about 15%, probably even a little bit more. And so it's growing pretty quickly, even at interest rates that can't go lower. So I think, we're going to be able to really predict with absolute confidence that it's the end of authority of the nation state. It's the end. And in fact, with this Black Lives Matter movement, I'm sure most people weren't really too surprised by that. Summary executions of black men in the United States, even if they're complete losers and criminals, it's not right thing to do. So police policing has retreated, right? and you can make guns now in your home, and technology is so cheap now. I mean, you could probably make a man pad with the sensor. So how is the nation state going to survive? It's not going to. Weapons technology and information technology and information and knowledge are just going to be so powerful. It's going to be utterly frightening. So that's basically the answer to your question.
Okay. What about the geopolitics role that's being played out in
Well,
the world?
yeah, excuse me. I'm not sure I can really answer that with much confidence. Although, once the United States goes bankrupt, bust, and I speculated to you, Khaled, that we retreated from Afghanistan mostly because we couldn't afford it anymore. So once this happens, the United States goes defaults. They'll pardon me. They'll probably try to prop it up a little bit, restructure the debt, and this might give it some life, but probably not. And it will happen just like the British Empire went down. The dollar will uh, be devalued in the markets, just like the British pound was between 1930 and 1935. And of course, Adolf Hitler was elected in 1933. So, you really can't predict who's going to get, power in Germany. I mean, it will be extreme right in Germany for sure. It will be extreme right in France. What extreme right, maybe not the right word, but they're going to have ideas that look pretty conservative compared to the left wing stuff we have today. And maybe most dictators around the world or authoritarian regimes will try to replicate that. I noticed that a granddaughter of Mussolini was elected to some office, a local office. I read that in the news today. So it's a fascist party basically, and people in northern Italy are saying we need to have conservative policies. So I think we're gonna see Russia become a lot more conservative, and the Zionist way of life, or Zionist domination of the world, is clearly coming to an end. And people are going to get freedom, Palestinians included. Everybody's going to be able to look at the net and do what they want with the information they can get, and it's going to be free.
In order for the Palestinians and to get the freedom, it also means the regimes all around
Yeah.
Palestine, they must kind of fall as well. How
Yes.
soon how soon do you think the Sykes and Picot will reach its
Yeah.
end of the road for
Yeah.
the Sykes and
Yeah,
Picot?
good question. Well, those borders, Sykes-Picot, like you said, those are the borders that the British and the French drew up in the Middle East, right? So, I think these borders are just going to dissolve. They're going to disappear, and you're going to have people moving around, and weapons will be developed, and you'll get man pads, and commercial airliners will be shot, blasted out of the air near airports. I mean, and I don't know that anybody's going to be able to do anything about it. You can have bombs, going off on the road. That's how the United States was defeated in Afghanistan and Iraq. The IUD, what's it called? What's it called, Khaled? You have an explosive device sitting on
Yeah,
the road underneath.
IED, I think.
IED,
Mm.
yeah. And so you have these explosive devices, and car bombs. I mean, car bombs were a big deal in Lebanon. I predict car bombs and IEDs and of course man pads, and or new. I mean, this is all coming. I think it's going to be extremely violent and destabilizing, and people will be on the move, and government authority will just dissolve. There'll be no taxes.
But
Just like the Roman Empire.
Saddam Hussein tried to erase the border,
Yes,
and
he
he
did.
was hammered down.
Yeah, I was actually in touch with him, and hoping to interview him, and I interviewed his ambassador at the United Nations. It was my first interview, World Affairs Monthly, in 2002. So I was advising him that this is the future, and I think he agreed. So yeah, he tried to erase the borders, but little too early.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's pretty early, back then, but he tried. Um, yeah, I don't think the future is going to be too comfortable. People are going to be really freaked out by it. It's going to be pretty frightening. But when the Roman authority disappeared, Khaled, you
Mm-hmm.
couldn't travel, right? You really could not travel. You'd be killed the minute you left the city. You'd be killed by bandits, by whatever. You know, the only way you could travel is with a small army or a militia of some kind. You'd be robbed and killed, and your wife would be raped or taken as a sex slave.
Okay, my last question.
Yeah,
Uh, I think everybody is talking about the Chinese trying to stand up to the Anglo-Saxon hegemony.
yeah,
Is there anything real there, or is it just
yeah. I
hot?
think they are. Yeah, I think they are. Yeah, but it's cautious, but I think there's some willingness to push it, you know, and Joe Biden seems to be willing to, kind of play with the Chinese, that is, cooperate with them. So, but I think the Chinese ultimately are pretty cautious. Excuse me, sorry for the cough. They they don't want to bring on antagonism that's going to hurt them. So they're just being cautious. But yeah, I think they're going to be more and more assertive. Well, they've shown that to be the case.
Okay.
But the
So
Chinese have always been kind of to themselves. They have not ever dominated. They moved into Tibet. They moved. The Han Chinese moved south into the southern part of China, what is now southern part of China. Um, but they do it slowly and demographically. They take over with the Chinese population. They don't. I mean, they built a wall to keep out the Mongol hordes. So they're
true.
not really a war. They're not. They're pretty pacific people. I mean, they're not a warlike people at all.
Okay.
I mean, the Europeans were definitely warlike,
True.
extremely warlike. For centuries.
So do you see a conflict between China and the West, or
Not
is it
really, because the United States is bankrupt, and wars are so expensive. I did an interview with this guy, Mahbubani,
Mhm.
Singapore, and I think that's at monitoringrisk.com. You can listen to that. Um, yeah, I don't think there's going to be any conflict. I mean, look, who can predict the future? I mean, there could be some crazy thing happen, but if we do enter a conflict, the United States will be defeated pretty quickly,
true? Okay. Well,
unless we use nuclear weapons.
hope not. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll leave it there. And
Okay.
thank you very, very much.
Good to
Thank you,
talk to you,
Tom.
Glenn.
Good to talk to you. Thank you.
Yeah.